Hey guys, tonight we're heading to a wedding that absolutely should have been a good time. The kind of divine gathering where everyone glows. Literally, the wine flows without limit, and no one's supposed to bring drama. But of course, this is Olympus. And if there's one thing Greek gods are good at, besides being immortal and vaguely narcissistic, it's holding a grudge. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, a mortal man and a sea goddess, respectively. You're standing in a field on Mount Pelion, beneath a sky so bright it could bleach thoughts from your head. The guests shimmer, literally shimmer. Zeus is here. Hera, Poseidon, Athena. Everyone who's anyone in Olympus has turned up. Even Apollo, who usually skips events that don't include lyres or lighting effects, makes an appearance. And despite the awkwardness of a goddess marrying a mortal, which is like a celebrity dating someone without social media, spirits are high. Except for one. One goddess was not invited, and she's about to ruin the vibe permanently. Her name, Eris, goddess of discord, literally the embodiment of petty chaos and mean girl energy. She got left off the guest list because, well, her thing is starting fights. You don't invite someone whose job is chaos to a wedding. That's just asking for broken plates and public crying. But Eris isn't going to stay home and journal about her feelings. No. She shows up anyway, unannounced, unbothered, and holding an apple. Not just any apple. A golden apple. With one phrase carved into its gleaming surface, to the fairest. No one sees her slip it onto the feast table. She doesn't shout or throw anything. She just places it like a perfectly timed curse and vanishes into the soft folds of myth. And that's when everything begins to unravel. Because gods, despite being divine, are not known for their emotional maturity. Especially not when it comes to vanity. Three goddesses see the apple at the same time. Hera, queen of Olympus, and absolute power dresser. Athena, goddess of wisdom, warfare, and that one very sharp glint in your professor's eye when they know you haven't done the reading. And Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and questionable romantic ethics. They all assume the apple is meant for them. Instantly. Without hesitation. Without humility. They don't talk it out. They don't agree to share. They don't even flip a coin. They just argue. And not the kind of arguing where someone cries and the other person says, "Let's take a walk." No, this is divine level thundercloud energy, hair whipping, lightning threatening kind of arguing. And nobody wants to referee, not even Zeus. In fact, Zeus does the celestial equivalent of backing slowly out of the room and going, Let a mortal handle this. Now pause for a moment. Let that sink in. The king of gods who once turned into a bull just to seduce someone, decides this situation is too messy for him. That's how bad it is. So he sends the three goddesses to a Trojan shepherd boy named Paris. Yes, a mortal. Yes, very much not qualified. But Paris is known for two things, his charm and his fairness. Also, he's attractive enough to get away with not knowing what he's doing. Now, historical scholars still argue whether this moment-handing cosmic-level judgment to a sheepherder is a metaphor for mortal hubris, or just a cautionary tale about saying yes when divine women ask for favors. But either way, the damage is done. The apple is no longer just fruit. It's a fuse. And you're standing there, watching it all begin. The wine at the wedding tastes a little sour now. The laughter feels thinner. You hear the clink of goblets and the murmurs of scandal starting to spread like wildfire. You probably won't survive this, by the way. No one really does. The Trojan War is about to happen, but not for a while. First, we have to give these goddesses a chance to really ruin someone's life. And that someone poor, doomed Paris, is about to become the most regretted casting choice in mythological history. You're in the foothills of Mount Ida now, a peaceful stretch of pasture land overlooking Troy, where the wind carries the scent of thyme and wet grass. It's quiet here, peaceful, almost suspiciously so. Paris is lounging beneath an olive tree, probably daydreaming about nothing in particular, the way only men with no current responsibilities or foreknowledge of global wars can. Maybe he's adjusting his tunic. Maybe he's admiring his reflection in a puddle. He's not exactly doing anything useful. And then, out of the bright ether of Olympus, three goddesses appear. Not one, not two, three. They don't knock. They don't float down gently with harps. They just appear with all the fanfare of a surprise audit. Paris blinks. You blink. It's a lot. Imagine being told you need to settle a petty beauty pageant between your nation's three most powerful deities, none of whom are known for handling rejection well. It's a lose-lose situation, the kind of task you'd only accept if you were young, bored, and slightly too confident in your own taste, which, spoiler, Paris is. The goddesses approach Hera in her regal whites and gold's eyes, sharp as court daggers. Athena stands like a statue in bronze, all intellect and muscle, and something ancient behind her gaze. And Aphrodite, draped in soft pinks and perfumes, offers the kind of smile that could end cities, which, as it turns out, she will. Each one introduces herself, like Paris doesn't already know. Like any Trojan shepherd is just casually used to divine women descending into his fields. And then Hera starts her pitch. She doesn't bother with flattery. She's a queen, not a flirt. Hera promises him power kingship over all of Asia, wealth control empires, the kind of offer that comes with fine robes and stressful dinner meetings. Next, Athena steps forward. She's less flashy, but infinitely more dangerous. Her gift, wisdom, victory in battle, eternal renown, the kind of legacy that ensures songs will be sung about you long after your bones are dust. Historians still debate whether Athena truly believed Paris was a military man, or if she just knew exactly how to bait a young ego. And finally, Aphrodite. She doesn't offer kingdoms. She doesn't promise power. She offers love, but not just any love. She promises Paris the hand, and presumably every other part of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Never mind that she's married. Minor detail. Aphrodite practically purrs it as if marital status were a bureaucratic hiccup, easily brushed aside. And here's where things get truly messy. Because Paris, a man with the weight of nations balancing on his sheep-calloused hands, makes the kind of choice that will live in infamy. He picks Aphrodite, and just like that, the apple is hers. The war is set. He has no idea what's coming. He just wants the girl. Now fringe scholars have pointed out that Paris might not have understood the geopolitical consequences of his decision. Others argue that the entire scenario was rigged from the start, that the gods were always going to tear the world apart and just needed a fall guy. But let's be honest, if you're offered infinite power, military greatness, or a goddess-promised affair with the planet's most beautiful woman, and you pick Helen, maybe you weren't ready to be making important decisions. The goddesses vanish. No congratulations. No supportive follow-up. They've got what they wanted, or didn't, and now it's Paris's problem. Back in Troy, the breeze is starting to shift. The sky seems a little heavier. There's something in the air that smells like fate, and also possibly smoke. And far away in Sparta, a queen brushes her hair, unaware that her name has just been dropped into a celestial contract she never signed. You find yourself beneath the same olive tree where Paris once stood, but now the shadows feel heavier, the air a little more expectant, because now you know who he really is. He's not just some shepherd boy with good cheekbones and terrible judgment. Paris is a prince, born to King Priam and Queen Hecuba of Troy. He was the royal baby with a prophecy on his head before he could even gurgle, and not the good kind of prophecy, not he'll bring peace and grow crops. No, the oracle predicted he would one day cause the destruction of Troy. Charming. Understandably alarmed, Priam does what many ancient kings do when faced with ominous predictions. He panics and makes a morally questionable decision. The baby is sent away exposed on Mount Ida, left to the elements, like a really unethical security deposit. But of course, Paris doesn't die. A kind-hearted herdsman finds him, raises him in secret, and gives him a surprisingly normal rural life. Goats, hills, an occasional festival, all while his royal family sleeps better, thinking he's been eliminated from the story. Fast forward a couple of decades, and Paris grows into that exact kind of irritating young man you'd expect from a prince who doesn't know he's a prince. He's handsome, he's smooth, and he's the kind of guy who probably asks questions in class just to hear himself speak. But he's not all bad. He's clever. He has a way with words. He's got charisma, the dangerous kind that sells snake oil and starts wars. Historians still argue whether Paris was truly naive or just hopelessly self-centered. Either way, he's the sort of person ancient literature loves: beautiful, complicated, and absolutely cursed. Now let's rewind a little to that whole returning to Troy situation. You see, around the time Paris makes his fateful judgment between the goddesses, he's already reconnected with his birth family. Yes, they take him back. No hard feelings, apparently. Oops, we tried to have you killed as a baby, but water under the bridge. Ancient royal families are complicated. Queen Hecuba is thrilled. Priam relieved in that awkward dad way where he doesn't really talk about emotions. And the rest of the royal court, they're divided. Some remember the prophecy. Others just see a charismatic young prince return from the hills with sheep dung still on his boots. Still, Paris is welcomed back into the palace with fanfare, robes, jewelry, maybe even one of those bronze bath basins no one uses properly. He goes from zero to royal real fast. And yet, he carries something else now. A promise. From a goddess. A woman. Helen. Now, if you pause here, and you might ask, why didn't he stop to consider that this whole situation was cursed from the start? But no. Paris moves forward with all the caution of a man walking blindfolded into traffic because someone told him there was cake on the other side. Troy, at this point, is at peace. It's a wealthy city with walls so tall they kiss the clouds and citizens so used to luxury that even their spoons are probably unnecessarily artistic. The idea of war unthinkable. But the gods are watching, still invested, still whispering. And Paris, he's about to book a little trip. Now, here's a quirky tidbit in some fringe versions of the myth. Paris travels to Sparta under the pretense of diplomacy as part of a friendly mission between cities, which is like showing up to someone's housewarming party with the intention of stealing their spouse. Technically polite, morally catastrophic. So he sails. He brings gifts. He probably practices his smile in the polished side of a shield. And you're on that boat now, drifting across the Aegean, the wind just light enough to whisper future regret into your ear. The sky is blue, the waves are lazy, and in the distance, Sparta gleams, sun-drenched golden, and completely unprepared for what's coming. You step off the ship and onto Spartan soil, the kind that crunches softly underfoot and smells faintly of crushed sagebrush and ocean salt. Paris stretches like a cat in sunlight, adjusting the folds of his fine Trojan cloak, the kind stitched not for practicality, but for flirtation. Sparta is impressive. Low stone walls, wide courtyards, disciplined guards who don't blink even when a foreign prince arrives with an ego the size of a minor deity. And in the center of it all stands a palace, both elegant and functional, the kind of place where diplomacy and domesticity awkwardly coexist. Inside is Helen. You've probably heard of her. The most beautiful woman in the world. A face that allegedly launched 1,000 ships. Though, let's be honest, it was less about her face and more about the fragile male egos orbiting it like doomed moons. Helen is married, of course. Her husband is Menelaus, king of Sparta, a man with a square jaw, dependable sandals, and the simmering rage of someone who's always one goblet away from yelling at a banquet. And yet, the moment Helen and Paris meet, something shifts. Now scholars still debate this part. Was it love at first sight? Was it Aphrodite's meddling? Was Helen bored? Was she enchanted, manipulated, or just done with Greek husbands? No one agrees. Some ancient texts suggest Helen went willingly, seduced not just by Paris's looks, but by the glamour of being adored by a foreign prince. Others argue she was abducted, carried away against her will, a pawn in divine warfare she didn't sign up for. Still others propose it was both, that messy human gray zone where love, duty, and magic collide. But what we do know, they leave Sparta together. Maybe it's a slow escape late at night with whispered promises and creaking floorboards. Or maybe it's grand and brazen, a ship loaded with stolen treasures and not a single backward glance. Either way, you're on that ship again. The sea is darker this time, like it knows. Helen stands at the prow, hair catching the wind like a warning flag. Paris grins beside her, convinced he's just pulled off the greatest love story of the age. And somewhere behind you, in Sparta, Menelaus is waking up to an empty bed and a furious realization. Now, here's a detail. People forget Paris didn't just take Helen. He took treasure. Gold, silver ornaments. Enough wealth to offend not just a husband, but an entire international alliance. This wasn't a romantic getaway. It was a diplomatic grenade. And when Menelaus realizes what's happened, he doesn't scream. He doesn't weep. He gets quiet. The kind of quiet that sharpens into fury. The kind that rewrites history. You can almost hear it, the sound of swords being unhooked from walls of scrolls being opened, of messengers dispatched in every direction, like hornets from a kicked hive. And above it all in the heavens, Aphrodite smiles, because her promise is kept. Paris has his prize. And the gods, they're ready for war. Now you're in Sparta's great hall, where the air is thick with tension, the scent of burning oil, lamps, mixing with something far heavier, betrayal. Menelaus stands at the center, his jaw clenched tighter than a blacksmith's vice. Around him, courtiers whisper and glance sideways, their faces masks of shock, anger, and disbelief. Helen, or rather, the woman everyone calls Helen, is nowhere to be found. Her name alone is enough to make men's hands twitch toward their swords and women clutch at their veils. You have to understand, Helen's beauty wasn't just cosmetic. It was legendary. Ancient poets compared her to the dawn the sea foam even the very light of the gods. She was a living masterpiece, a prize coveted by kings and poets alike. And yet, that same beauty made her a dangerous weapon, a catalyst for jealousy, suspicion, and ultimately war. What's ironic is that Helen had lived in Sparta as Menelaus's queen for years before Paris arrived. Their marriage was one of political alliance, not romance. The couple was powerful, but the spark was missing, a quiet truth many historians have uncovered through ancient letters and later texts. And so, when Paris spirited her away, some whisper that Helen didn't resist, that the golden apple had set in motion not just divine conflict, but human dissatisfaction, longing, and the eternal question: how much control does anyone really have over love? Scholars still argue whether Helen's departure was an act of will or captivity. But either way, the damage was done. Menelaus's response. He called on an ancient vow. Years before, Helen's many suitors had sworn the oath of Tyndareus, a solemn promise to defend the chosen husband's claim, no matter the cost. This little-known pact, often overlooked in casual retellings, was a binding political contract, stronger than most marriages, and stronger than any mortal's sense of peace. This oath meant that when Helen was taken, it wasn't just Menelaus's pride that was wounded. It was the honor of every king, prince, and nobleman who had once sought her hand. They were all bound to act. So, what did they do? They prepared for war, but not just any war, the kind that would shake the very foundations of the ancient world. You're watching as messengers ride out on swift horses, the word spreading like wildfire through city-states across Greece. Lords gather their armies, warriors sharpen their spears, and ships begin to line the Aegean coast like dark, ominous fish waiting to be unleashed. And yet, even as this storm gathers, there's a strange sense of inevitability to it all, as if the gods themselves had scripted every insult, every stolen glance, every whispered promise, just to watch the world unravel. Meanwhile, Helen's name becomes a paradox, a symbol of beauty and the root of devastation. A woman whose face launched not only ships, but centuries of stories. Stories where love, war, betrayal, and tragedy weave together in an unbreakable tapestry. You can almost hear the ancient poets murmuring through time, debating her role. Was she victim temptress or something far more complex? One thing is clear: the golden apple wasn't just a gift, it was a sentence. And for Helen, for Paris, and for every soul caught in the tide, the consequences were about to unfold. You find yourself standing before the towering walls of Troy, a city famed for its strength, wealth, and a sophisticated culture where art and war coexist. The atmosphere here isn't peaceful, despite the flickering lights of lamps in the night and the gentle melodies drifting through the grand halls. You hear the steady clatter of warriors' sandals on stone, the murmurs of courtiers, and an undercurrent of anxiety, subtle but pervasive, something everyone senses, but few dare to speak aloud. News of Helen's arrival spread swiftly. Ships bearing her along with treasures seized from Sparta, dock in the harbor, igniting a frenzy of rumors and tensions throughout the city. Her presence is both awe-inspiring and a source of unease. The question that torments both ancient and modern minds is this: was Helen truly abducted by Paris, or did she leave willingly? Sources from antiquity are contradictory, and scholars today still fiercely debate this issue. Some argue she was a victim swept away against her will by the charming but dangerous prince. Others insist she eloped, driven by passion, dissatisfaction, or even divine compulsion. Some versions even suggest a painful mixture of both. Within ancient poetry and drama, Helen's image is twisted. She is at once a divine embodiment of beauty and a symbol of betrayal. She becomes both the prize and the pawn in a game played by mortals and gods alike. Back in Sparta, Helen's absence cuts deeply. Menelaus's personal loss is compounded by a wounded sense of honor and sovereignty. Arinti, the theft of his queen, alongside precious wealth, is an affront to his dignity and status. His anger ripples across the Greek city-states, prompting a collective call to arms against Troy. Meanwhile, within Troy's walls, tension thickens. King Priam, Paris's father, is caught in a tormenting bind. He loves his son, but recognizes that Paris's actions may doom the entire city. Factions form, some defend Paris, seeing his role as divinely sanctioned, while others fear the catastrophic consequences. Messengers race along the roads bearing urgent news and calls for military muster. Kings and heroes from across Greece begin assembling their forces, preparing for a war unparalleled in scale and consequence. Among the notable figures are Odysseus, the clever, cunning king of Ithaca, whose strategic mind is as sharp as any sword. Achilles, the young warrior of unmatched strength and volatile pride, and many others, each with their own motive, stories, and stakes in the coming conflict. Historians still debate whether this war was truly about Helen, or if she was merely a symbol, an excuse for ambitions, rivalries, and divine games far beyond mortal control. Yet, one thing is undeniable. The Golden Apple's promise has set in motion a chain of events that will alter the course of history forever. The winds of fate carry you now to a quiet, shadowed room in ancient Sparta, where an oath quietly binds the future of nations. This is the oath of Tyndareus, a pact forged in honor, loyalty, and a generous dose of political foresight. Helen's many suitors, once hopeful men from across Greece, had sworn years earlier to defend the chosen husband's claim to her hand, no matter the cost. It's like a cosmic prenup, but with more swords and less paperwork. You picture the scene: kings and princes gathered, each declaring their solemn vow, unaware how this small act of unity will ignite one of history's most devastating wars. Historians still debate whether this oath was a political masterstroke or a recipe for disaster, but the consequences speak for themselves. Menelaus, once a husband with quiet authority, now wields the collective weight of this oath. He's no longer alone in seeking Helen's return. Every suitor is honor-bound to raise arms, stirring a coalition unprecedented in its scale. As you watch emissaries ride out to distant city-states, rallying allies with promises of glory, justice, and perhaps a share of spoils, the Greek world bristles with anticipation as kingdoms prepare to mobilize their warriors, fleets, and resources. You can almost hear the echoing clang of armor being donned, the sharpening of swords, and the solemn prayers to gods who watch eagerly from Olympus. For in this world, oaths made in honor can become chains, dragging nations into chaos. Yet amidst the stirring drums of war, a somber question lingers. How many lives will this oath cost? And will Helen herself ever find peace? You find yourself in a grand hall where kings and warriors from all corners of Greece assemble like an ancient Avengers team, but with more spears and fewer capes. The air buzzes with the sounds of clanging armor, whispered strategies, and the uneasy tension of men preparing for a war that nobody is quite sure how to win. This is the forming of the Greek coalition destined to lay siege to Troy, led by Agamemnon, brother of Menelaus, and a king with a reputation as fierce as his sword. This alliance is a curious blend of reluctant heroes, eager warriors, and political opportunists. Among them are legends in the making. Achilles, whose rage will become the stuff of myth. Odysseus, whose cunning will outwit gods and men alike. Ajax, towering and brave, and many others, each bringing their unique skills, pride, and grudges to the battlefield. As you watch them prepare, there's a sense of inevitability. The oath of Tyndareus has bound these men together, but old rivalries simmer beneath the surface. Historians still debate how united this coalition really was, or if internal conflicts weakened them from the start. You notice the strange mix of hope and dread among the warriors. They're about to embark on a campaign that will last 10 years, a decade, marked more by petty quarrels and failed assaults than glorious victories. The ships they build are impressive, sleek vessels designed to cross the Aegean Sea, but not all of these warships sail straight to Troy. The first expedition ends up attacking the wrong city entirely, an embarrassing blunder that only fans the flames of tension. This misadventure shows how chaos and confusion often accompany even the most legendary wars. Back on the shores, the Greek kings hold council plotting and bickering, while heroes rehearse speeches and sharpen weapons. Every man dreams of glory, but few understand the sacrifices that await. You realize that this coalition, though mighty on paper, is fragile, held together by honor, ambition, and the shared desire to reclaim Helen. And somewhere deep beneath the surface of this grand alliance, the seeds of discord, like the golden apple itself, have already taken root. You find yourself stepping into the dusty, sunlit courtyard of Ithaca, home of the cunning Odysseus, a man whose reputation for cleverness is rivaled only by his penchant for theatrics. It's said that when the call to war reached him, Odysseus decided to pretend he had lost his mind. The goal? To dodge the draft, or at least the danger. Picture this: a king plowing his fields with a plow fashioned out of salt-weaving madness into his every gesture. He's so convincing that the Greek envoys sent to recruit him pause puzzled before concluding he's truly lost it. Some say he even tried to sow salt on the ground to prove his insanity, a symbolic act of barrenness. But the story doesn't end there. Palamedes, a sharp-eyed Greek commander who suspects the ruse, plays a dangerous game to expose Odysseus. He places Odysseus's infant son in front of the plow. Odysseus's madness falters immediately, his instinct to protect his child breaking the act. This little scene is a curious blend of comedy and tragedy, revealing the lengths to which men would go to avoid death while being drawn inexorably toward it. Historians debate whether this tale reflects a genuine event or serves as a moral lesson about duty and deception. Regardless, it underscores the complexity of human nature amid the looming war. Odysseus's cunning would later become legendary, shaping the very course of the Trojan War and its aftermath. For now, however, you see him as a man torn between fear and honor, embracing madness to escape a fate he both fears and cannot avoid. You're now in the royal palace of Phthia, home to the young and fiery Achilles, whose story is one of both glory and tragedy. His mother, the sea goddess Thetis, knows that her son is destined for greatness, but also for an early death. Determined to protect him, she hides Achilles away on the island of Skyros, disguised as a girl among the daughters of King Lycomedes. Imagine Achilles in a flowery dress, awkwardly trying to blend in while secretly yearning for battle. The scene is almost comical, but the stakes couldn't be higher. Thetis's attempt to save her son is a desperate gamble against fate itself. Meanwhile, the Greek army prepares for war and realizes they desperately need Achilles' unmatched prowess. Odysseus is sent on a mission to find him, using wit and guile to reveal Achilles' true identity. He cleverly lays out weapons and feminine trinkets. Achilles is drawn to the armor, betraying his warrior spirit. Historians debate whether this episode is a later addition to the myth meant to highlight themes of identity and destiny. Some suggest it symbolizes the tension between youth and maturity, peace and war. Achilles' emergence from hiding marks the turning point in the Greek war effort. His presence on the battlefield inspires hope, fear, and fierce rivalry. But even as Achilles steps into his role, the shadow of his early death looms. His mother's fears are well-founded, and the young hero carries the weight of prophecy as heavily as his bronze armor. You watch as Achilles prepares to join the conflict, torn between the desire for everlasting glory and the dread of a life cut short. The Greek fleet finally set sail under a sky heavy with omens, the sea a restless mirror of the uncertainty ahead. You stand on the deck of one of the warships, feeling the salt spray and the creak of timbers as the ships cut through the waves bound for Troy. But this journey is anything but smooth. Almost immediately, the gods unleash their fury. Storms rise, winds howl, and the fleet is scattered. Some ships veer wildly off course. Others are battered against rocky shores. The sense of divine displeasure hangs thick, and sailors whisper of curses and ill fate. Historians still debate whether these storms represent actual maritime challenges faced by ancient fleets or serve as metaphorical trials testing the resolve of heroes. The ancient Greeks believed such omens were messages from the gods, warnings to be heeded or consequences of prior offenses. In one dramatic episode, the Greek forces land at a city mistakenly identified as Troy. They sack this place, burning homes and taking captives before realizing their error and withdrawing. This blunder, embarrassing and costly, sows seeds of discord within the coalition. Back aboard, the ship's commanders quarrel over strategy and morale. Some favor immediate assault. Others caution patience. Among the tension, Odysseus's voice rises with reason and cunning, his strategic mind beginning to shine despite the chaos. You see warriors sharpening weapons, tending wounds, and exchanging stories of home. Despite the looming war, moments of camaraderie and human vulnerability emerge amidst the storm. This tumultuous start foreshadows the long, grueling siege to come, a conflict marked more by attrition and petty disputes than swift, glorious victories. As the fleet finally regroups, the horizon gleams with the distant walls of Troy, both a beacon of hope and a harbinger of suffering. You find yourself standing on a wind-swept beach, the sun dipping low as the Greek ships come to rest, but not at Troy. Instead, they have landed in the wrong place entirely, the city of Ismarus, home of the Cicones. It's a misstep that would seem ridiculous if the consequences weren't so dire. The Greeks, eager and restless, launch an unplanned attack, sacking the city and looting its riches. But their victory is short-lived. The Cicones rally, calling reinforcements, and soon the Greeks are fighting a desperate retreat. Many soldiers perish, and the morale of the expedition suffers. This blunder is emblematic of the chaos and confusion that will mark much of the Trojan campaign. Historians debate whether this episode is a historical memory of early Greek raids on Thracian lands, or a literary device highlighting human error and divine punishment. Back on the ships, leaders argue over discipline and strategy. Some blame reckless ambition, others divine will. Odysseus emerges as a voice of caution, urging restraint and unity. You watch as the fleet sets sail once more, battered but determined, bound finally for Troy itself. The delay foreshadows the long siege to come, a war not of swift glory, but drawn-out hardship. As the shores of Troy rise on the horizon, the warriors prepare themselves for a conflict that will test every ounce of courage and endurance. The city awaits, proud, defiant, and ready. You now stand inside the grand walls of Troy, a city alive with anticipation and guarded by towering battlements that have stood for generations. The citizens move with purpose, preparing for the storm that is coming, the war that has been whispered about in every corner of the city. King Priam, the wise and venerable ruler, holds council in the palace chambers. His face is marked by years of leadership and worry. His son, Paris's actions have cast a long shadow over the city's fate. And now Priam must balance paternal love with his duty to Troy. The city's defenses are reinforced walls, repaired, and soldiers drilled. Watchmen patrol the ramparts, eyes scanning the distant horizon for signs of the Greek armada. The tension is palpable, every footstep echoing the growing dread. Amidst the bustle, priests and seers gather, interpreting omens and prophecies. Some warn of inevitable destruction, others urge faith in the gods. Historians still argue about the role prophecy played in shaping Trojan morale. Was it a source of hope or a fatalistic acceptance? Paris himself walks the city streets with a complex mix of pride and guilt. The weight of his choice between the goddesses presses upon him. His beauty and charm have been his blessing and curse. You overhear conversations between Trojan warriors, their voices tight with resolve, yet tinged with uncertainty. Among them is Hector, Troy's greatest defender, steadfast, honorable, and deeply devoted to his city and family. His presence offers a glimmer of hope amid the brewing storm. Outside the walls, the countryside lies peaceful, but that calm is deceptive. The looming siege promises to change everything. You realize that Troy is not just a city. It's a symbol of resistance, heritage, and the tragic consequences of divine meddling and mortal passions entwined. The war that was to be swift stretches into a decade. The siege of Troy becomes a saga of attrition, frustration, and simmering tempers. You find yourself walking through the Greek camp where the tents flap in the wind and the soldiers' faces show the wear of endless waiting. Days blur into months and months into years. The initial enthusiasm fades, replaced by exhaustion and the slow grind of war. Skirmishes break out sometimes, brutal, sometimes petty. Heroes quarrel, alliances strain, and morale fluctuates like the tide. You overhear soldiers grumble about the lack of progress, about the endless battles with little gain. The war, they say, is more about endurance than glory. Historians argue over the accuracy of the 10-year figure. Some suggest the war lasted shorter. Others see it as symbolic of the drawn-out nature of ancient conflicts. You witness moments of heroism and moments of despair. Leaders like Agamemnon and Menelaus command troops, their decisions sometimes questioned. Warriors seek honor, but the cost weighs heavy. The gods continue their games, their favors shifting like the winds. The battlefield is as much a stage for divine rivalry as mortal struggle. In the midst of the siege, the city of Troy remains resolute, its walls holding firm despite constant assaults. Hector leads the defense with unmatched courage, embodying the spirit of the city. You feel the tension thickening, knowing that the war's turning points are yet to come. The years of fighting have changed everyone involved, shaping destinies and fates. This prolonged conflict becomes a testament to human endurance and the tragic consequences of pride and passion, fueled by divine interference. Amidst the ceaseless conflict, the human dramas weave a tangled web of loyalty, passion, and loss. You find yourself inside the tent of Achilles, where shadows flicker against leather walls, and the air hums with tension. Here, the famed warrior sulks wounded, not by spear, but by pride. Achilles' anger simmers over a dispute involving Briseis, a woman captured during raids and given to him as a prize. When Agamemnon demands Briseis be handed over, Achilles perceives it as a grave insult, a public slight that wounds his honor deeply. In retaliation, he withdraws from battle, refusing to fight. This act of sulking changes the course of the war. Without their greatest warrior, the Greek forces struggle, morale drops, and the tide turns in favor of Troy. You watch as Patroclus, Achilles' close companion, dons the hero's armor to rally the Greeks. His bravery reignites hope, but ends tragically when Hector kills him in battle. This death reignites Achilles' fury and drives him back to the front lines, seeking vengeance. These personal stories of loss and friendship are the beating heart of the epic, reminding you that behind every spear thrust lies a human soul. Historians debate the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, ranging from deep friendship to romantic bond, reflecting the complexities of ancient Greek notions of loyalty and love. Meanwhile, Briseis becomes a poignant symbol caught between war and desire, prize and person, her fate entwined with the fortunes of heroes. This section of the war reveals the interplay of human emotions amid the epic scale of conflict, a reminder that even gods and heroes are not immune to the frailties of the heart. The gods, far from mere spectators, weave themselves deep into the fabric of the war, each choosing sides with personal motives and grudges. You feel their presence as palpable as the clashing of swords, their divine interventions turning the tide of battles and altering mortal fates. Zeus, the king of gods, tries to maintain a balance, but his own attachments and rivalries pull him in conflicting directions. Hera despises Troy and supports the Greeks with relentless fury, while Aphrodite true to her promise, protects Paris and the Trojans. Athena stands as a fierce champion of the Greeks, guiding warriors with wisdom and strategic brilliance. Yet even she is not free from bias or wrath. The battlefield becomes a cosmic stage where lightning bolts strike and divine shields shimmer, where gods cloak themselves in mortal forms to sway heroes or sow discord. Historians still debate how these divine interventions reflect ancient Greek beliefs. Are they metaphorical expressions of fate or literal accounts of gods meddling in human affairs? You witness moments when a god saves a hero from death, only for another to strike vengeance moments later. The gods' rivalries fuel not only the war, but the stories that have echoed through millennia. This divine drama amplifies the mortal struggle, making the Trojan War a mythic tale of power, pride, and the blurred lines between fate and free will. You realize that for the Greeks and Trojans alike, the war is not just a battle of armies, but a contest of gods, each playing their part in an eternal drama. You find yourself in the shadowed aftermath of Patroclus' death, a moment that shakes the very soul of the Greek camp. Achilles, previously withdrawn in anger, is consumed by grief and rage. His sorrow is a powerful storm, tearing through his resolve and driving him back into the brutal heart of battle. Donning new armor forged by the god Hephaestus, shining and adorned with cosmic symbols, Achilles returns to the fray with a fury unmatched. His presence on the battlefield shifts the tide dramatically, striking fear into Trojan hearts. Hector, Troy's noble defender, stands as his formidable opponent. The two meet in a duel that has echoed through the ages, a clash of pride, skill, and fate. The duel is as much about honor as survival, the air thick with tension and the weight of destiny. Achilles' wrath culminates in Hector's death, a turning point that shakes Troy to its core. The city mourns, but the war is far from over. This chapter of the war is marked by themes of loss, vengeance, and the tragic consequences of pride. Achilles' fury, while heroic, is also a harbinger of doom. Historians discuss whether Achilles' rage serves as a metaphor for human grief or a reflection of ancient values surrounding honor and vengeance. You watch as both sides grapple with the cost of war, friendships, broken families shattered, and the inevitable march toward destruction. In this crucible of loss, the characters reveal their deepest humanity, their flaws and virtues intertwined. You're standing just outside the impregnable walls of Troy as a strange and cunning plan unfolds, one that will forever be remembered as the climax of deception and strategy in ancient warfare. The Greeks, despite years of siege, find themselves unable to breach the city's defenses. Odysseus, ever the strategist, proposes a daring ruse: build a massive wooden horse hollow inside to conceal a select group of warriors. The Greeks pretend to abandon the siege, leaving the horse as an offering to the gods, an apparent gesture of surrender and peace. The Trojans' suspicious yet hopeful debate the meaning of this gift. Some counsel caution, others, weary and longing for an end to the war, urge it be brought inside the city walls. Historians continue to debate the origins of this tale, whether it reflects actual military tactics or serves as a symbolic narrative of betrayal and downfall. Eventually, the Trojans decide to pull the horse into the city, celebrating what they believe is victory. Under the cover of night, the Greek warriors emerge from the horse, opening the gates for the returning army. Chaos ensues. As Troy is overwhelmed, its fate sealed by the clever deception. You witness the tragic fall of a proud city brought low, not by brute force alone, but by cunning and guile. The wooden horse becomes an enduring symbol of war's complexities, the thin line between honor and trickery, victory and destruction. As the fires rise and the screams echo, you feel the weight of history, pressing down, a reminder of how a single act of deception can change the course of civilization. You stand amid the ruins of Troy, a city once proud and vibrant, now smoldering under a crimson sky. The air is thick with ash and sorrow, the cries of the defeated mingling with the crackling of flames that consume what remains. It's a haunting tableau of victory and loss intertwined. The fall of Troy is not a triumphant moment, but a somber reckoning. Families are shattered, treasures lost, and centuries of culture reduced to embers. You see grieving mothers, warriors, fallen, and survivors wandering like ghosts through the devastated streets. Historians debate the actual historicity of Troy's destruction, with some seeing it as a symbolic end to an era, while archaeological evidence suggests multiple layers of destruction and rebirth. You witness the paradox of victory for the Greeks, a hard-won prize shadowed by the cost of lives and honor. For the Trojans, a tragic end to their legacy. The stories of heroes like Hector, Achilles, and Paris echo through the ashes, their deeds immortalized yet tinged with regret. Amid the ruins, the themes of fate, pride, and the consequences of divine interference come to a poignant close. As the sun sets on Troy, you are reminded of the fragility of human endeavor, the fleeting nature of glory, and the enduring power of stories that outlive the fallen. As the fires die down and silence settles over the ashes of Troy, the echoes of that golden apple ripple through time, shaping stories, art, and the collective imagination for millennia. You find yourself not just a witness to an ancient war, but a traveler through the enduring legacy of myth. From the romance and betrayal to the epic battles and tragic heroes, this tale encapsulates the complexities of human nature, love and jealousy, honor and pride, fate and free will. The golden apple that started it all was more than a simple fruit. It was a symbol of desire and discord, a catalyst for events far beyond its physical form. Scholars continue to explore the layers of meaning within the myth, debating its origins, its reflection of historical conflicts, and its moral lessons. Through countless retellings, in poems, plays, and paintings, the story of the Trojan War remains a mirror to our own struggles and passions. You realize that myths like this endure because they speak to something eternal within us, the tension between choice and destiny, the consequences of our actions, and the bittersweet nature of glory. As you close this chapter, the distant sounds of waves and whispers of ancient voices linger, inviting you to reflect on the power of stories to transcend time. The war may have ended, but the tale lives on, waiting for new listeners, new dreamers, and new journeys.